Hello. So, I am chilling for the moment. I just got done washing my hair. Got my space heater on. Sorry. Trying not to be weird and go to sleep early so I could sleep all night. Took the day off from cleaning because my body is hurting really bad, so gonna wake up and go to the store, and wake up and then start on the cleaning. So that is gonna be one hell of a task. I've got everything I need pretty much. I commented on a post for the first time in a little while about the autism stuff. Now that I've got my physical paperwork, that explains it, I found it. It's I think $200 paperwork. I mean, it's not free information. It's used for a job. The people that decide whether or not, people the people who transcribe that information, that's their book work for working for doctors' offices and medical practices and stuff, and so that is I may still do that work and stuff. I have all the schooling and paperwork to do it. It's not up to date, but and just go buy it, and go get a job and do that. Anyways, and sure enough, like I said in the comment, I was like, it's a religious practice, to call something the opposite of what it is. It is defined that even by the states of the United States of America, people and practices and stuff have their own ability to go in large enough quantities to go and practice how they want to. Holistic medicine is definitely a thing, and so are other types of medical practices outside of monotheistic religious practices, which is what Prisma is based on, and St. Francis. Both of those are based on monotheistic religious practices. In fact, St. Francis is named after a Catholic saint. So and because it is practiced like it is, it's people are aware, within the monotheistic medical practices of what it is, because but the thing is that in classier, practices and mainstream stuff, people don't, people will be like, okay, I know what you're talking about, because they see it in the news and they hear people talking about it, but it doesn't fit, with any modern medicine from 10 plus, before 10 years ago. Everybody knew that, like, people have talked about it and made the jokes, for the last like 50 years. It's been a popular joke, but that's what it is based on some people calling their children who have ADHD retarded, because that's what that means. As a person who is autistic, like when you have classic autism, you do not have the abilities to do a lot of things in life, no matter, like I've said, no matter what you have or what you give. Like, you cannot grow back a hand. Like, when you are born without something, like an organ, or a specific type of, sensing, or like, when you're born without eyes, like, you can't, have a normal situation. Like, it doesn't go back. Yet piece of what else, And so, of course, someone is going to come and tell me that everything I said is wrong. But, my grandmother, who has dementia, cussed everybody out in the room a month ago because, I asked her if she had gone to church recently, and she said yes. And my grandpa was like, "You haven't been to church in 5 years." And she cussed everybody out in the room. She's like, "How dare you say that about me, blah, blah." But literally, no, she hasn't. She definitely has not been to church. She, has 2 broken hips. She has dementia. And she's got cancer. Like, she can't go and sit in a church. Like, that goes against physical science, like, but she doesn't want anybody to say that. And in a spiritual sense, she wants it to be known that she does go to church, and so we don't argue with her, because it's her life and stuff. And that is how, that is empathy. But the thing is when you're speaking in a group of people, like, the example I did a minute ago, on a public page, and, I followed all the ethical grounds. There isn't any name calling, there isn't any kind of, anything, negative about it. It's just, going, like, I was just adding on to what the post said, and clarifying, to what it meant. And someone came along and was like, "You're wrong." And the point is that they don't know the definition of it. They don't know the definition of autism. As most people say, they have never met anybody with autism disorder. And that is because, it is extremely, extremely rare. Like, in the scheme of things, like, the math is there that is extremely rare. If you know anything about how science and math correlate together, over a period of time and stuff, physicists understand how that works. They've created models and stuff of, like, literalness, like, to show, like, we travel to space and stuff like that. That is people explaining, things like how types of math works and probability and statistics. I am not a rocket scientist, but I do understand, bits and pieces of it. I understand about as much of it as I do Spanish, living in the southern part of the United States. Workingly, not just like by piece too, because that is something about science, is that if you know a little bit about anything, then, given enough time, you can also learn a little bit about anything, and it mass out, like, it's printed, it's used. It was something that was used for a very long time, that has been being used for, not quite, about 75 years, to like in is of the medical, where medicine and finances, the insurance companies, have been using this math, like this documentation and these facts, that's what they go by, until very recently. It is not my problem because, of course, like, why would I say that people can't practice their religion their own way? That is definitely not something that I would do, but like, it does, political opinions and where money goes and stuff. As a citizen who pays taxes, it is my right, if I know something, to pass that knowledge along. Like, that makes sense, If somebody knew something that other people didn't quite understand, of course, you would tell them that, like, if they wanted to know. And I do see a lot of people that want to know. Do you force other people not to practice their religious, practices? Hell no. Like, I have spent my entire life, agreeing that people should be able to practice their religious, ness in the way that they want to. If that means that, hey, I'm somebody that's all for lying, like, you don't have to tell anybody shit. Like, if you want to live a secret way, and have one way and talk about something with you and your wife and your kid and make a pact and say, okay, we're going to pretend like we're black and tell everybody else we're black and live like that, like, as an example, and that makes you, does something positive for your life, then more power to you. Because we do live in the United States, and that is something, that the United States was, like, born on, was the freedom of expression and the freedom of religion. That includes, holistic medicine. And that is filed under, like, the two different types of autism, the factual based one and the one that's covered under religious, like that is liable, Of course, people don't understand what religion is. People don't understand, they do, but they also want to do exactly what, the whole reason why it's a public thing, supposedly, is so people can be given an education outside of school, so they can learn things. But the thing is that hidden within that same group of people are people that don't want others to know. They think that if they are lying about something, that they are a liar, and that is a lot. Lying to lie and having told lies is not the same thing as being a liar. Because there is absolutely, in a religious sense, in a monotheistic religion sense, there is absolutely no reason why, if you are being held captive, that you should not lie to your captor. Like, that does not make you a liar. That's not how life works. It does not specifically say that in the Bible, but, it is understood that you are to take care of yourself. You are to, love Jesus, love yourself, love your neighbors, and sometimes that does require, protecting yourself in a, verbal way that people might be like, oh, well, you're telling a lie. But like I said, telling lies is not the same thing as being a liar. In fact, if you tell the truth to your captor and put yourself at risk, that is being a liar. So that is why the Bible does not make sense to everybody, because not everybody understands that truth. Not everybody understands, has been put in a situation to where they know what it is to have to take care of yourself in a life or death situation. But, that is also why the military is a thing. is to give people, that kind of experience, so people will know the truth about how much your life matters to you and the people around you. Exactly what education is for. Education is to grow your empathy. If you have low empathy, that correlates directly to low intelligence. Low intelligence and low empathy correlates directly to a shorter lifespan. That is 100% a fact. That is a thing. Like, not being able to take care of yourself definitely means your life isn't going to be you're not going to live as long and stuff. There's all kind of different tons and tons of hundreds of reasons why that's a reality. But the thing is that, on the internet, it's really easy for people just to come along and throw rocks and throw stones and say weird stuff. Also, people don't exactly give a shit, Sometimes people do know what I'm talking about, and they have, reasons to why it may not be something that they think everybody should be aware of, Sometimes people fit under that category themselves, They have, like, the most common thing is people identify with the Asperger's thing, which they've just taken to saying autistic now. And it's like, but the thing is that how they react, like, they have a personality disorder. That is what it is. So technically, if there is an adult, and funny enough, this does not apply to people who have had their kids diagnosed with autism or Asperger's. Those kids are just filed under ADHD. More specifically, ADD. But the thing is, adults who have taken it upon themselves to consider themselves, and even go so far as to lie and say that they have been diagnosed with, what it would be as Asperger's, but with the autism thing, is a personality disorder. It is a disorder of being a liar. It is a disorder of aggression. It is a way to normalize people who do others wrong as a basis. Like, it is a disorder of being poor, and that is something that does not make any fucking sense. Because to be honest with you, being poor, and having that information is great, to come to that conclusion and realizing what it is, because that means the only way to go is up. But the problem is that those lots of people are not doing that. They are on the internet, and they are making it other people's problems. Now the thing is people have been like that since the beginning of time. So, it really doesn't matter. The only thing you can really do is ignore it and be aware of it. And the reason why I talk about it is so others don't feel so alone, and to know that their math is right, and someone has to say it, and no one is really going to say it because they haven't lived that life. Like I said, it's like there is nobody in my grade that I went to elementary school with, and there are several people on my Facebook that I actually have known my entire life, and, who were there, like, when all that happened, and, like, when it came out, and, in second and third grade and stuff, and, like, we had about 50 to 100 kids in my grade, at Taylor's Elementary. Like, I still have never in my life met anybody else with autistic disorder who had that, like, textbook, Kaner syndrome and stuff. Like, it's not, like, it's extremely rare. If you didn't have all that happen, the breakdowns and the psychotic episodes and the physical symptoms that happen because it's a neurological thing, like, then you don't, you don't have it. You have Asperger's, and that is just a personality disorder. And as a person with autism, I'm immune to that. Like, and that is a problem. Like, I don't get to fight and argue with people because I can't reason that, because I can't do the same emotional, like, what it takes in order to argue with people. I don't have that. Like, it is a blindness. It is a disability to not be able to be an asshole. And I spent a long, but, on the other side of it, I spent a long time of going through therapy so I wouldn't give too much. Because, like I said, it creates a blindness. So, you would think with someone being blind that they would be timid and shy and stuff, and I did. I was, sickeningly shy when I was a little kid. But the thing is, with lots of prolonged stress, it pushed me to the other side of things. It made me, as a teenager, when my hormones gave me a rush, and made me have lots of energy and stuff, and I got stressed out because I didn't have emotional support in my family, because I didn't reach out. They, would stop, it's bad parenting, but still it happened. They stopped being there for me emotionally. So, like, it wasn't because anybody did anything, it's because they're assholes, and that happened. But, it started making me have breakdowns for a different reason, because I was doing too much, because I was getting burned out, and then it's because it's like being in the water and drowning and trying to grab something to, after a while, like, you give up. And so when I was about 16 or 17, I was diagnosed with dysthymia or whatever. It's a mild version of depression, and it will be lifelong, because it is attached to having, any kind of medical disorder. Just like if you have diabetes, chances are you're going to have a form of depression. It's the same, like any kind of medical problems cause mental health problems. Even more show that, literal autism disorder, is an actual medical condition outside of mental health. Like, it doesn't go away after childhood, and that is the reason why they changed the name of it from autism disorder to autism spectrum disorder, because it is lifelong. That has nothing to do with different people, that has to do with different stages in your life. There is pediatrics, there is, and geriatric care. Pediatricians practice completely different. They have different medicine than geriatrics do. There's things in the body, like I explained the other day, I was like, if somebody, because if you're old and stuff, it's gonna be assumed that, certain levels of certain ways, you're going to be more prone to this, more prone to that, more prone to this. And so the probability and statistics of other things happening is completely different than medically practicing for a child. If a child has some, issues compared to when you're an adult, it makes you look in different directions of what could be the cause. That is the differences in different medical practices and stuff. That is also alludes back to what I was saying about how this situation with calling Asperger's the opposite of what it is with autism is a religious thing, because it doesn't actually have a place in everybody's life. ADHD is kind of hard to get around in the American medical situation. I can't say the same about other countries, but America, definitely is like, watchful about ADHD, where some countries aren't. And that is what Asperger's is. So, is German ADHD, which is ADD. But that is something also, like, it's not ADD and ADHD anymore. It's just ADHD, because that word assumes that like you're not balls to the wall all the time. It goes like it's a scale, depending on what's going on in your life and stressors and stuff, depends on whether you're going to be, or hell, if, like two people, identical twins, can be separated at birth, both have ADHD, but one person, their parent dies and the house burns down, they might be more prone to ADHD, where the other twin, has got more going on and stuff, and is more healthy, economically and stuff, and so they don't ever like have that hyperactivity shit, and it's more just ADD. That is the reason why you just call it ADHD. That is the reason why they took the ADD out there, because it's assumed. It doesn't say that. So, neither does the autism spectrum disorder. It does not explain the difference between it and the couple years beforehand and the previous ICD manual. It doesn't. It assumes that the person who's reading it, because they are medically trained, understands that they're connected. They didn't burn all those books. Like I have one. It's like most doctors' offices probably still have their manuals from previous years. It's just explained differently. It's still in the same category. And also on top of that, like I said, being a liar is not a psychotic symptom. In fact, if you have psychosis as a kid, you're not going to want to be a liar. There's a lot of disorders that you can have as a kid that make you not want to do shit when you're older. That is the foundation behind trauma studies and all kind of shit. And literally, if you get to looking around, people who have who say that they have the autism spectrum disorder or Asperger's or whatever, are literally people sitting around saying that they're an alien from outer space, that none of that applies to them. So, it would be different if, because like they have included in narcolepsy, I've discovered this year, people who have sleep disorders, without cataplexy, which isn't narcolepsy, but they have narcolepsy type 2, because it mimics it, and that's fine. They don't have autism spectrum disorder and autism spectrum disorder 2. People are literally thinking that there's levels within it. The thing is those different levels depend on each individual. Like, as a person, if something had happened when I was a kid, I could have been a level, I could have been intellectually disabled. Like I said, if I get meningitis, I will be intellectually disabled. I do not have borderline personality disorders. In fact, people think I'm an asshole, because borderline personality disorder often enough present as an empath. And an empath is a personality disorder. Personality disorders have low empathy and they have high empathy, over empathy. That is part of ADHD, the ADD and the hyperactivity of the situation. That's of activity. In personality disorders, you have under empathy and you have hyperactive empathy. Either one is a disorder, but the thing is the functioning level. If you can't do what it is, if you can't maintain good work ethic, if you can't maintain good relationships with other people without trying to screw them over, without trying to insult somebody or attack somebody, or have a conversation and stuff that's normal, if you don't have normal self-esteem levels and stuff like that, and I have all that, I've never had any problems. There's never been one single sign whatsoever ever of any kind of personality disorder. And that is weird. It is a disorder, because at the end of the day, personality disorders are for people who commit crimes. It is the human experience, hence the reason why we have all these different religions, to flip and to the possibility to become a liar. Being a liar is not a crime. It is a condition that is, someone needs help. But the thing is that 100% cannot diagnose children with an empathy disorder, because you cannot say your child is a slave. Now they do, and the thing is that lots of parents do go along with it because they do have people around them that also don't understand, that have personality disorders. Like I have a grandmother that you definitely have to spell everything out for her, And yes, at the end of the day, a couple of years ago, she says that she is autistic, that she has, in her dementia, that she has personality disorders. And we're all, nobody said it, but it's like, yeah, I know, I've been going to therapy, my entire adult life to deal with you. It's like everybody and their mother knows that you have a personality disorder. Of course, I'm not going to say that, but, because, there's no reason to, because I am the one, that has been hurt by it, I'm the one who has been taking care of her my entire adult life, so, and, documenting all her criminal activities that she does, because she is definitely a criminal, it's not like people do shit all the time to get away, with stuff and laugh about it and, and teach their kids how to be criminals and stuff. But, so she definitely has a diagnosis, because I made sure that, like I said, I went and, she recorded it on VHS and stuff. She, is very much a tyrant. But, that it's common, that's, like I said, it's like, yeah, at least one person in every classroom has a family member, has to deal with, that kind of stuff from a parent, or somebody close to them, so, and I knew that, I knew that when I was younger and whatnot, but, I certainly, went and was like, the thing is I can't deal with it on my own, because I do have a disability. So I went and got help, and they helped me. They helped explain it to me, not directly, of course, because it is something that's it's hard to talk about, go sit around and talk about other people lying and shit. That is the human experience, but they gave me enough information to understand, that I am being held back, and what it is, and they gave me the education for it. So, because when the state gets involved, they might, it's not like I was trying to get her in trouble or anything, like that kind of thing. I didn't want to do that, it's not like I wanted her to go to jail or, or make up any kind of, because it's criminal, but tons of people commit those kind of crimes, emotional abuse and psychological abuse, but like I said, that's the thing, is so many people go through it, I wanted to be able to understand it well enough to explain, because I actually have a point of view to where I can, in some ways, deal with it better than other people, because I'm really, really exposed to it, but at the same time, I didn't have a good foundation, because I do have, tons of it around me. So, in fact, that is probably the reason why I have this disorder in the first place. Because, yes, if a handicapped person, a person who is mentally disabled, who shouldn't have children has children, there is going to be a higher chance that the child is going to have a disability. Absolutely nobody disputes that. And both of my parents had ADHD. So, often enough, you know, people who have disabilities in that way are ignorant and stuff like that. Literal ignorance, you know, does create physical issues with their children. Like, you know, yet again, no, absolutely nobody disputes that, because, you know, like, people are more attracted to people with high intelligence. So, you know, that's the thing. I just wanted to spit that out in my own way, so I cannot sit here and think about somebody, like I said, I don't have those. I can go back to playing my video game for the night. But, hey, like I said, though, I am going to be cleaning another room tomorrow, and that's going to be good. I can't wait to be able to open my house up to guests again. And I am in a situation where everything is much more slowed down. I have healed from a lot of trauma and stuff, and from losing my the pregnancies that I lost and stuff, and so that is great. That's wonderful. There's happy things happening each day, so all that's awesome. I hope everybody's doing okay, and I hope everybody has a good night and rest of the week.